the main gate of the military base. I'd been here a few times a month and could have found my way blindfolded. But today, everything felt different. I was holding my little Teddy by the hand. He was wearing a navy blue button-down shirt I had just bought him, and in my other hand, I carried a thermos. Inside was a rich, slow-simmered chicken noodle soup with fresh herbs that I had spent half the day making. Last week, David had called complaining of stomach pains. I had specifically asked a doctor friend who told me this kind of bone broth was the best thing to soothe gastritis. Teddy looked up at me, his eyes shining. "Mommy, Daddy's gonna be so happy to see us." "He will be," I said, stroking his hair, imagining a smile breaking across David Walker's normally strict face. I couldn't help but smile myself. We walked up to the guard shack. A young, unfamiliar soldier, looking barely 20, stood at rigid attention, his face tense. "Good afternoon. I'm looking for the base commander, Colonel David Walker. I'm his wife." I smiled politely and lifted the thermos. I brought him a homemade lunch. The young soldier looked at me, and something incomprehensible flashed in his eyes. He picked up the local landline, dialed a number, and quietly spoke a few phrases. I couldn't hear everything, just catching the words "commander's wife." And at the gate, hanging up the phone, his expression grew even stranger. "Mrs. Walker, it's best if you return home." He tried to avoid my eyes. "The colonel cannot receive guests right now, cannot receive guests." I was taken aback for a moment, then chuckled. "I'm not a guest. I'm his wife. Just tell him Sarah is here. He'll understand." The soldier's face turned bright red. His lips trembled, as if the words were stuck in his throat and he couldn't force them out. "What is it?" My smile slowly vanished. "Mrs. Walker, truly, it's not possible right now," he managed to squeeze out, his voice dropping to a whisper. "The colonel's childhood friend is currently on base. Visitors are strictly prohibited today. Childhood friend on base. Visitors prohibited." Those words pierced my ears like ice needles and shot straight through my veins, nailing my heart in place. It was July, the asphalt radiating a blistering 95 degrees, yet I stood at the gates of the military installation, shivering with a freezing chill. Reflexively, I looked down at Teddy. He was looking between me and the soldier, in confusion, not yet grasping what had happened. I crouched down and covered his ears with my hands. His little ears were small and soft. I pressed my hands so tightly that my own fingers trembled. "Teddy, Mommy is going to talk to the man now. Don't listen, okay?" Teddy obediently nodded. Staying crouched, I looked up at the young soldier. I was looking at him from below, but under my gaze, he involuntarily took a half step back. "What did you just say?" I asked, quietly. So quietly I didn't recognize my own voice. "A childhood friend, Mrs. Walker. I'm just relaying orders." The soldier panicked. "Who gave this order?" "Sergeant Evans, the colonel's ed." "Sergeant Evans." I hissed the name through my teeth. I stood up, took my phone from my purse, and dialed a number. 2 rings. Connected. "Alex," I said. My middle brother, Major General Alex Sterling, answered with a smile in his voice. "Well, look at this. Our little princess remembered she has a brother. Did Walker upset you again?" "Alex, I am standing at the gates of David Walker's base." I pronounced every word with absolute precision. He ordered them not to let me in. He said his childhood friend is inside, and visitors are prohibited. Silence fell on the other end of the line. Alex Sterling had given 20 years to the military, rising from platoon leader to a 2-star general at Regional Action Command. I knew him too well. The quieter he got, the more terrifying his wrath. "Sarah," his voice dropped, turning into a frozen winter river. "What do you want?" "I demand a complete purge by the Sterling family," I said. One hand still covered Teddy's ears. The other gripped the phone so hard my knuckles turned white. "Tell Nick, and Anna too. David Walker and his childhood friend will not get away with this. No mercy." "Copy that." Alex said only those 2 words and hung up. I put my phone back in my purse and crouched down again, removing my hands from my son's ears. Teddy blinked. Mommy, aren't we going inside? No, we aren't. I picked him up. The 4-year-old was already quite heavy. I adjusted him on my hip, pressed my cheek against his, and said, Mommy is going to take you home and make pot roast with mashed potatoes. Do you want that? But what about Daddy? Are we not giving him his soup? He looked down at the thermos resting on the ground. The soup I had simmered for hours, skimming the foam 3 times, adding the best herbs, an aromatic, perfect golden broth. I had poured it into the best thermos and carried it here with such care. I raised my foot and kicked the thermos. The lid flew far off to the side. The golden broth spilled across the asphalt. Homemade noodles and chunks of chicken fell into the dust. The young soldier opened his mouth but didn't dare say a word. Let's go, Teddy. I turned around, holding my son. My heels clicked against the concrete. Click, clack. Every step was firm and confident. Lying on my shoulder, Teddy looked at the broken thermos and whispered, Mommy, it's a pity about the soup. I wouldn't even give it to a dog, I replied. I carried Teddy to the parking lot, put him in his car seat, buckled him up, then got behind the wheel and started the engine, but I didn't drive off. Immediately, I sat in the car, staring at the base gates. For 4 years, since the day I married David, I had entered those gates. Every time, the guards saluted and welcomed me. I thought it was respect, an acknowledgement that they considered me one of their own. Only today did I realize those gates had never truly been open to me. His childhood friend, Emily Harper. Of course, I knew about her. They had grown up together on a military base. Their families were close. Once, David's mother even joked that the kids would grow up and get married. Then Emily went off to study in Europe, and she was never mentioned again. When David and I got married, his mother brought Emily up once. My older sister, Anna, immediately shut her down. Past connections stay in the past. Right now, David is marrying my younger sister. I hope you, Eleanor, understand the difference. Back then, I thought my sister was being too harsh. I even asked her to soften. Oh, up! Believing David's love was enough and the rest didn't matter. 4 years. I gave him a son. I carried the weight of the entire household, took care of his parents. When his father was in the hospital, I spent 7 days and nights in his room. For his mother's milestone birthday, I spent a month hand-knitting a cashmere throw blanket, working until my fingers bled. Where was Emily Harper when I was doing all that? I didn't know. But now I knew she was back, and I had been thrown out of my own husband's domain. I took out my phone and opened my messages. I texted my oldest brother, Nick. Nick, I need a background check on someone. Emily Harper. She recently returned from Europe. I need a full dossier. Who she met, what she did, where she lives. Send. Then I opened another chat. Anna, Alex is already in the loop. I need you to do something. Compile a full list of all resources, projects, and credit lines. The Walker family received thanks to Sterling Enterprises. Maximum detail. Send. I tossed the phone onto the passenger seat and pulled out. Driving out of the parking lot, I took one last look at those gates, hit the gas, and drove away. Without looking back, returning home, I changed Teddy's clothes, washed his hands, and set him up in the living room to watch cartoons. Then I went into the bedroom and opened the bottom drawer of the dresser. Inside were things I hadn't touched in a long time. The shareholder agreement. Shares of Sterling Enterprises. Before his death, my father had transferred 15% of the company's stock into my name. I had never gotten involved in the business. My older brother Nick ran everything. Every year, after dividend distribution, Nick simply wired the money to my account. I never even looked at the numbers. I didn't need them. But there was one clause in this agreement I always remembered. A shareholder, owning at least 15% of the shares, has veto power. I pulled out the document. The paper had yellowed slightly, but the signatures were crisp. My father's signature. My signature. I traced my finger over my father's name, and my eyes suddenly stung. Dad, I whispered. I promise you won't be ashamed of me. My phone rang. It was Nick. Sarah. His voice sounded very calm, but I knew he was faking it. The men of the Sterling family were always like this. The greater their fury, the calmer they became, like the ocean before a hurricane. Still on the surface, while deadly currents raged below. I emailed you Emily's dossier, Nick said. Take a look, then we'll talk. But I can tell you right now, her past is filthy. I mean, those years abroad. Officially, she was studying. In reality, she was involved in highly questionable projects. Our lawyers are digging up the details now. We'll have results in 3 days. Good. I took a deep breath. Nick, there's something else. Listening. I want to recall all investments and contracts that Sterling Enterprises provided to the Walker family. A momentary pause hung on the line. When Nick spoke, there was a slight smile in his voice, but it radiated ice. Are you sure? I'm sure. All right, he said. When do we start? Right now. Hanging up, I opened my laptop. Emily's dossier was massive. Small print, resumes, photos, social network webs. I scrolled page after page. Emily, Harper, 31 years old. 2 years older than me. Master's degree in materials science from a European university. Worked for 3 years at a foreign research institute. Returned to the States early this year. Upon returning, she got a job at a defense contracting firm located near David's military base, rented an NETB-NEO apartment less than a mile from the base. I kept scrolling and suddenly saw a photo. The image was grainy. Nighttime. The dim light of a street lamp. A man and a woman standing by a dark Chevy Tahoe. The man was David Walker, the woman Emily Harper. David had one hand resting on the roof of the car, looking down at her. Emily tilted her head up. The distance between them was less than 4 inches. In the bottom right corner was timestamp. 3 days ago. I stared at the photo for a long time. 3 days ago, David had texted me, saying he was incredibly busy this week and asked me not to come to the base. He said he was preparing for a major training exercise and was staying late every night. So this was what kept him late. I closed the laptop, leaned back in my chair, and closed my eyes. My mind was chaotic, but at the same time, astonishingly clear. I remembered when David proposed 4 years ago. He got down on one knee, held out the ring, and said, "Emily, will you marry me?" My sister Anna had laughed. "You even got the name wrong. And you're proposing." David's face instantly burned. He began hastily apologizing. I'm sorry, I'm just so nervous. Sarah, will you marry me?" Back then, we all just thought he was overwhelmed with nerves. I opened my eyes. Emily, Sarah, what irony. My phone rang. It was my sister Anna. "Sarah, I've checked everything." Anna's voice was sharp and businesslike. I drafted a rough list of what the Walkers got from Sterling Enterprises. 12 construction subcontracts totaling over $250 million. 37 vendors, all are reliable partners. 5 banking. Guarantees totaling $85 million. She paused, her voice turning frigid. There's something else you don't know. David's father's company was on the verge of bankruptcy 3 years ago. Nick injected $10 million on behalf of the corporation to save them. Capital injection, the Walkers signed a performance agreement. They committed to reaching a specific profit margin within 3 years. We're in the 3rd year now, and their profits aren't even close to the required benchmark. Why didn't anyone tell me about this agreement? I asked. Nick didn't want to stress you out. You had just given birth to Teddy. You were exhausted. We decided to keep it quiet. We thought, well, they're family. We have to help. Who knew they would? Anna trailed off, but I knew what she meant. Set up a meeting with Nick and Alex tomorrow evening at the old upstate estate, I said. I need to make an announcement. Understood, Anna replied, adding, Sarah, whatever decision you make, we are entirely on your side. Hanging up, I walked into the living room. Teddy was sitting on the sofa, watching cartoons, hugging his stuffed bear. Seeing me, he ran up with a smile. and hugged my leg. Mommy, I'm hungry. Mommy will make food right now. I knelt, picked him up, and kissed his cheek. Teddy wrapped his arms around my neck and said in his little voice, Mommy, let's not go see Daddy anymore. I don't love Daddy anymore. I froze. Why don't you love him? Because Mommy was crying today. I hadn't cried. At least, not in front of Teddy. But kids notice everything. Okay. I hugged him tighter. We won't go see him anymore. That evening, after putting Teddy to bed, I sat alone on the balcony. My phone, screen lit up. A text from David. Sarah, I was told about what happened today. Don't overthink it. Emily came to 7. See me for work. Her current company is running a joint project with our base. She's the project manager. I ordered the guard not to let anyone in because I didn't want us interrupted. It wasn't directed at you. As soon as I finish up, with things in a few days, I'll come home and explain everything. I read the message, took a sip of water, and replied, Okay, focus on your work. After sending those words, I placed the phone face down. Outside the window, the New York skyline stretched out, a sea of lights. I had lived in this state for 29 years. Since childhood, my parents spoiled me. My brothers and sister protected me. I had never known disrespect. Marrying David, I thought I had found one more person I could rely on. Now I realized you can only truly rely on yourself. The phone lit up again. A short text from General Alex. 2 lines. The purge has begun. Step 1. Freeze all connected accounts. Step 2. Recall all provided resources. Step 3. Awaiting your orders. I replied, Copy that. Then I deleted my entire text history with David, dating back to our very first message, just as I intended to erase these 4 years of marriage. The next morning, my vibrating phone woke me up. It wasn't my alarm. The buzzing was relentless. I opened my eyes. The screen was glaringly bright. Messages were pouring in one after another. I grabbed the phone and saw they were all from David's mother, my mother-in-law, Sarah. What is the meaning of this? Why did your brother suddenly pull the project funding? Do you have any idea that William spent 6 months fighting for this project? And they just yanked it. Is this how the Sterling family? It is business. Answer me immediately. I leaned against the headboard, read the messages start to finish, closed the Relder Sum There app, and opened my contacts. Before I could even hit the call button, the phone rang. The screen displayed David Walker. I stared at those 2 words for 3 seconds. Then I answered, Sarah Sterling, have you lost your mind? David's voice exploded through the receiver. He rarely spoke to me in that tone. In 4 years of marriage, he had been fairly mild-mannered. Even if irritated, he never yelled directly like, this. But today was different. My father just called, he said. Sterling Enterprises suddenly pulled their financing. Hundreds of construction workers are standing around waiting for their shift. Material funds are frozen. Did you decide to put my family in the grave? The rage in his voice boiled like magma. Just because I didn't let you on base yesterday, you pull this circus? Sarah, since when did you become so unhinged? I pulled the phone slightly away from my ear and waited for him to finish. Are you done? I asked. No. He exhaled heavily, trying to force himself to calm down. Sarah, I told. Emily was here for work. If you don't believe me, I can get people from the Dennerly Anaslos project team to confirm it. You can't blow up a ridiculous misunderstanding into a scandal like this. How are we going to look people in the eye? David Walker, I used his full name. My voice was eerily calm. So calm that even I was a little surprised. I'm going to ask you a few questions. Answer, honestly. Ask, how many times have you seen Emily since she got back from Europe? A pause on the other end. 3 or 4 times. Strictly for work. 3 or 4, I repeated. And before she returned, did you communicate? Silence. This silence was different. It was the silence of a man who had been hit right in his weakest spot, who hadn't had time to invent a lie but was terrified to confess. Another block of ice settled in my chest. You did, I answered for him. And more than once. Sarah. Second question. I cut him off. 3 days ago. Monday night. Where were you? On Monday? I was at the base, prepping the exercises. Are you sure? My voice finally changed. A glacial smirk crept in. David, think very carefully. Do you remember every minute of that Monday? Where were you at 8:30 p.m. and with whom? Another long silence, longer than the last. Then his voice dropped, full of the defensive reflex of a cornered animal. Are you having me followed? Having you followed? I laughed, and the sound grated even my own ears. David, do you really think you're worth following? You don't even know your own sins. Nothing happened between us, he blurted out, then cut himself off, realizing the phrase was practically a confession. My hand gripped the phone until it shook, but my voice remained steady. Did I say Emily's name? You took that upon yourself awfully fast. Sarah, you're provoking me. I'm not provoking you. I'm saying a guilty conscience speaks the loudest. I could hear his heavy breathing. It sounded like he was nervously pacing his office. Then the footsteps stopped, and his voice softened. Sarah, I admit it. I saw her a few times, but we were just catching up. We grew up together. She came back and invited me to dinner. How could I say no? Stop spinning this in. Your head, please. You and Teddy are the only ones in my heart. Catching up. Invited me to dinner. You and Teddy are the only ones in my heart. Such painfully cliché phrases. Every cheap soap opera cheating husband says exactly the same thing. David, I said. Do you know what Teddy asked yesterday? He faltered. What did Teddy ask? He asked if Daddy had stopped loving us. Silence hung heavy on the line. He also said he's never going back to see Daddy, I continued. He's only 4. He understands everything. When you ordered your aide to turn me away, did you think about the fact that your son was there? Did you think about how it felt? For him to see his own mother turned away at the gate? David's voice finally cracked with guilt. I didn't think about that. Sarah, I'm sorry. I really didn't mean to hurt you. It doesn't matter anymore, I interrupted. You don't matter anymore. I hung up, turned off the phone, and tossed it onto the bed. Lay the shareholder agreement I had forgotten to put away yesterday. I flipped to the last page. My father's signature was still there. The ink was slightly in a brangstat, faded, but the strokes were decisive. Dad, you said the daughters of the Sterling family should never swallow an insult, I said quietly. You're gone, but I won't let myself be humiliated. I turned the phone back on and called Anna. Anna, list out the exact terms of that profit agreement. I want to know the precise consequences of their failure to perform. Maximum detail. Already done, my sister's voice was all business, as always. 3 years ago, when Nick injected $10 million, the Walkers signed a contract. They committed to reaching a net profit of at least $15 million over 3 years. But based on the books I pulled yesterday, their total profit for 3 years was a measly $7 million. They didn't even hit half. The penalty? Full buyout. Sterling Enterprises has the right to demand the Walkers buy back all corporate-held shares at the original price, plus a 20% penalty, within 90% penalty days. If the Walkers can't find the money, we seize all company assets. Anna paused, a predatory edge entering her voice. I ran the numbers yesterday. $10 million principal plus $2 million penalty. That's $12 million. In their current plus $2 million state, they couldn't scrape together $1 million. Perfect, I said. Do one more thing. Compile a single document with all resources, projects, loans, and guarantees they received from us over the last 3 years. List the amounts, dates, and authorizing names. What for? So everyone can see how the Walker family built themselves up on the back of the Sterling family and exactly how they repaid us. Silence on the line. Sarah. Anna's voice unexpectedly warmed. Have you thought this through? If you take this step, there is no going back to David. Anna, I replied. When he ordered them to turn me away at the gate, the way back was already cut off. Anna didn't argue further. The women of our family never begged anyone to look back. You'll have the documents after lunch, she said, and hung up. I went to the kitchen to make Teddy breakfast. I fried an egg, made toast, warmed some milk. Teddy climbed into his high chair himself and waited, obediently. Mommy, are we going to preschool today? We are. I placed the plate in front of him. Eat up, and Mommy will drop you. Off. Teddy took a bite of toast, stuffed his cheeks, and mumbled, Mommy, yesterday, a man called the house phone. I froze. What man? He said his name was Evans, that he works with Daddy. He asked if Mommy was home. I said Mommy was putting me to sleep, and he hung up. Sergeant Evans, David's aide, the same one who delivered the order yesterday. Why? Was he calling our landline? I crouched down, trying to look natural. Teddy, did the man say anything else? No. Teddy shook his head. Just asked if Mommy was home. I stood up. Alarm bells rang in my head. The sergeant wouldn't call on his own initiative. He only followed David's orders. David had him call to check something to see if I was home, to ensure I hadn't gone somewhere, or maybe he was trying to cover his bases in case I started digging. I went into the bedroom and began searching the house. Closets, drawers, office, shelves. I searched for half an hour. In the bottom drawer of the desk, I found an envelope. It was unsealed. Inside were a few sheets of paper. I pulled them out. It was a life insurance policy. Policyholder, David Walker. Insured, David Walker. Beneficiary, Emily Harper. I read the policy 3 times. Issue date, 3 months ago. Coverage amount, $2 million. Beneficiary, Emily Harper. Under relationship to insured, it read, friend. His wife was me. He had a 4-year-old son, and his beneficiary was a person. Friend. My hands shook as I held the policy. Not from fear, from absolute disgust. 3 months ago, he was reliably coming home every night. Sometimes he stayed late. Sometimes he went on temporary duty assignments. Everything looked normal. The only difference. 3 months ago, he took out a new policy and wrote in another woman's name. I took a picture of the policy and sent it to Anna. She replied instantly. Just found this at home, I typed, pressing the screen so hard my fingers hurt. David bought a policy. Beneficiary Emily Harper. Anna didn't text back right away. About 3 minutes later, she called, Sarah, don't do anything right now. Her voice was cold as steel. Put the policy back. Don't spook them. I've already ordered the legal team to pull every blank Walker contract. Our best divorce litigator will contact you after lunch. You only need to do one thing. Find out what other assets David might have. Transferred. Okay. And one more thing. Anna paused. Alex said he already called David's superiors at the Pentagon this morning. All private tech funding and equipment Sterling Enterprises allocated for his training exercises are being recalled. Today. Whether he keeps his command chair is his problem. I hung up, put the policy back in the envelope, and placed it exactly as I had found it. Then I took Teddy to preschool. In the car, Teddy sat in his seat, kicking his legs and singing a song. Sunlight filtered through the window onto Enteuenlebrot, his chubby cheeks. His eyelashes were long and curled. Looking at him in the 7-5 lashes were long and curled. Rear view mirror, I remembered the day 4 years ago when I first held him. So small, so soft, crying like a blind kitten. David stood by the hospital bed, awkwardly taking him in his arms, his eyes red. He had said, Sarah, thank you. He had said he would take care of me his whole life, that our son would be the happiest child in the world. 4 years passed, and the man who promised to take care of me had written another woman's name on a life insurance policy. After preschool, I didn't go home. I drove straight to the Sterling Enterprises headquarters in downtown Manhattan. My older brother's office was on the top floor. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the city. When I walked in, Nick was sitting at his desk on the phone. Seeing me, he gestured to the sofa. Stacks of documents piled on his desk, and a complex corporate structuring chart glowed on his monitor. Ending the call, Nick walked over and sat opposite me. The lawyers finished with Emily Harper. He got straight to the point, sliding a folder toward me. During those years abroad, her research projects were closely tied to foreign military developments. After returning to the States, she got a job at a company where the primary shareholder is a distant relative of David Walker. I opened the folder and began reading. The most important part is here. Nick flipped to the last page and pointed to a paragraph. The project Emily is running right now is a technological partnership contract with David's base. The contract value is $10 million. But, according to our intelligence, the actual tech capabilities of her company aren't worth a fraction of that money. Are you saying they're laundering money through this contract? Nick's gaze grew heavy. Who exactly? You can guess. Everything instantly clicked in my head. Emily's return. The base project, managed by David. A $10 million tech contract. Emily's company. These dots connected into a straight line pointing directly at David Walker. Nick, is this evidence enough? Nick looked at me, and a slight smirk appeared on his lips. Exactly the same smirk as Alex's. The signature smirk of the Sterling men, cold and unshakable. Not yet, he said. But add the performance agreement failure. Add the life. Insurance policy. Add today's pulled investments. The Walkers won't last 3 days. His desk phone buzzed. Nick answered, listened for a few seconds, and his smirk widened. Hanging up, he said. David's father is here. Making a scene in the Bredas. Ground floor lobby. Why did he come? Why else? To beg for mercy. Nick stood up and adjusted his cuffs. Let's go. Down and take a look. Riding the elevator down, Nick looked at me. Are you scared? I shook my head. The elevator doors opened. William Walker stood in the middle of the massive marble lobby, flanked by 2 security guards. He wore a wrinkled suit, his face covered in sweat, his hair disheveled. He looked entirely different from the respectable man I knew. Seeing me step out, he lunged forward. Sarah, talk to your brother. You can't just pull the funding. If construction stops, our family is ruined. His voice was hoarse and desperate. I know David messed up. I will personally beat some sense into him. But you can't do this. William, I interrupted him, calmly, devoid of emotion. You say David messed up. How exactly did he mess up? The elder Walker froze. He couldn't find an answer. Nick intervened, speaking as casually as if discussing the weather. Because, before coming here, he called David. What did David say? That he didn't do anything wrong, and my sister is just making a mountain out of a molehill. William's face went pale. Did you, father and son, decide that once a daughter of the Sterling family marries, she becomes your property? That you can treat her however you please? Nick took a step forward. He was a head taller than Walker, and glared down at him. William, you're a businessman. In business, everything must be reciprocal. You took everything from the Sterlings, and in return, you abused our sister. Did you think a free ride like that exists in this world? William's lips trembled. And one more thing. Nick took a document from his assistant and handed it to Walker. This is the funding agreement from 3 years ago. The 3 years are up. Your profits are $8 million short of the target. Per the contract, within 90 days you are obligated to buy back Sterling Enterprises shares and pay a 20% penalty. That's $12 million. William took the document with shaking hands. The paper rustled loudly. $12 million. Where are we supposed to get that kind of money? Then we proceed according to the contract. Nick's voice was absolutely deadpan. Sterling Enterprises will seize all your company's assets. William staggered as if struck in the chest. He looked at Nick, then at me. His lips trembled for a long time before he squeezed out. Sarah, you can't do this. You're our daughter-in-law. I looked at his aged, desperate face. There wasn't an ounce of pity in my soul. William, I said, when David ordered them not to let me through the gate, did he think about the fact that I'm your daughter-in-law? Walker couldn't answer. When he named Emily Harper as the beneficiary on a $2 million life insurance policy, did he think about the fact that I am his wife? William's eyes widened in shock. Clearly, he didn't know about that. Your family never considered me one of your own from the start. I enunciated every word. so do not beg for mercy. I turned and walked back into the elevator. As the doors closed, I heard the elder Walker yelling something, but the soundproofing was perfect. Nick stood beside me. After a moment, he said, "The lawyer will contact you this afternoon. Have you thought about the terms of the divorce?" "I don't need to think. I've already decided." "And Teddy? What about custody?" "Full custody is mine." I watched the numbers changing on the elevator display. David Walker doesn't even get to dream about it. By the time I returned home, it was evening. I sat in the living room. Before me lay a stack of papers, contracts, the insurance policy, Emily's background. Check. The Walkers' financial records. Every piece of paper was a knife, and they were all aimed at one man. Outside, it was getting dark. The city lights flickered on one by one. The phone rang. It was my middle brother, Alex. "Sarah. Phase 1 of the purge is complete." His voice was firm and confident. "All of David's accounts linked to our corporation are frozen. The private funding for his military projects has been pulled. Command is fully aware." They convened an emergency meeting this afternoon, and David was called onto the carpet. Alex paused. "His authority as base commander has been temporarily suspended pending investigation." Suspended. The very status of base commander for which he left early in the Saturday morning and returned late at night. The status that was more important to him than me and his son. The status that gave him the power to bring his childhood friend onto the base and the audacity to throw his own wife out. "Alex," I said, "it's not enough." On the other end, Alex scoffed. A short, hard sound. "Of course it's not." "Enough," he said. "That's just step 1. Keep watching, little sister." I didn't have to wait long. The next morning, a call came from an unknown number. "Hello, is this Mrs. Sarah Walker?" The voice belonged to a middle-aged man. The tone was official but slightly ingratiating. "This is Major Smith from the base Public Affairs Office. Tomorrow at 10 a.m. we are holding a ceremonial assembly to honor distinguished officers. Colonel Walker is among those being commended. We would love to invite you to attend as his spouse. Would that be convenient?" Ceremonial assembly. Distinguished officer. I held the phone and almost laughed out loud. "Major," I replied. "I will absolutely be there." Hanging up, I sat on the sofa. Outside, bright sunlight flooded the hardwood floor with a golden hue. Teddy had already gone to preschool. The house was quiet, save for the hum of the refrigerator. I stood up and walked to my walk-in closet. In the very back hung a dress I had never worn. An emerald velvet evening gown. A gift from my sister Anna for my wedding. She had told me then, daughters of the Sterling family must have an outfit in which they can step the Blagade onto any battlefield with absolute dignity. For 4 years, I hadn't found an occasion to wear it. I took the dress out, hung it in front of the mirror, and studied it for a long time. The occasion had arrived. The next morning, I dropped Teddy off at preschool. Getting out of the car, he clung to my neck. "Mommy, who's picking me up today?" "Mommy will." I kissed his forehead. "Mommy will definitely be here." Teddy held out his pinky finger. I hooked my finger around his tiny one. On the drive to the base, I turned on the music. Not aggressive rock, but a very old song. The one my dad loved to listen to most. The urban landscape blurred past the window. My heart beat steadily and calmly. At the main gate, the guard checked my ID and saluted. "Good morning, Mrs. Walker. Proceed." I walked inside, my heels clicking. The hem of the emerald velvet dress fell to my ankles, shimmering with every step. Passing officers turned to look, but I didn't care. I walked unhurriedly and confidently. The auditorium was massive and packed with people in uniform. A banner hung over the stage. Garrison Commendation Ceremony. From a distance, I spotted David. He was sitting in the third row by the aisle in his dress blues. His medals gleamed under the lights. He hadn't noticed me yet. I headed toward the section reserved for officers' families. Women and children sat there. Someone recognized me and whispered, "Look, Colonel Walker's wife, the daughter of the Sterlings." Word is her middle brother is a general at the Pentagon, and her older brother runs a massive corporation. Walker sure got lucky. Lucky. I found an empty seat in the very last row. Before sitting, my gaze swept past the side door near the stage. It was ajar, and several people stood there. One silhouette was very familiar. Emily Harper. She was here too. I looked away and sat up straight. The woman next to me leaned in. "You're Walker's wife, right? What a gorgeous dress." I smiled at her. "Thank you." I saw the list of awardees, she continued. "Your husband is getting the top commendation. They say his tech partnership project is the most important thing on base this year. Is it true?" I kept my smile. It truly is an outstanding achievement. The assembly began. Speeches from brass, reports, waves of applause. David Walker's name was called a few times, and the hall clapped each time. He sat, with his back straight, his profile rigid and confident. I looked at him and remembered our first meeting 4 years ago. He was also standing in uniform in a crowd, seemingly radiating light. My father had pointed at him and said, "Sarah, that boy is going places. Dad, if you're watching from heaven, you'll be disappointed today." And now, the floor goes to Base Commander, Colonel David Walker. A roar of Texian applause. David stood, buttoned his jacket, and marched to the podium with crisp steps. He stood before the microphone, sweeping his gaze across the hall, a polite smile on his lips. Distinguished commanders, fellow officers, his deep voice echoed through the room. "It is a great honor to stand here. The successful advancement of our project would have been impossible without the support of command and the project. Selfless work of my subordinates. And also," he paused, "also without the full cooperation of Miss Emily Harper. As project manager, she brought cutting-edge technologies from abroad, making a critical contribution to the modernization of our equipment. I want to express my sincere gratitude to her." Applause erupted in the hall again. Sitting in the last row, I slowly clapped my hands 3 times, and then stood up. The emerald velvet flashed coldly in the spotlight. I started walking down the aisle toward the stage. Click, clack, click. My heels struck the stone floor sharply and rhythmically. People began to turn around. First one, then dozens. David was still speaking, into the microphone, but his voice suddenly faltered and broke. He saw me. His face changed 3 times in a fraction of a second. Surprise, panic, then an attempt to pull himself together. He gripped the microphone stand so tightly his knuckles turned white. I didn't stop. I walked past the rows, past hundreds of eyes fixed on me. Whispers rippled through the room. People craned their necks, trying to figure out what was happening. I reached the front of the stage and stopped. All attention was riveted on me. The brass on the panel exchanged bewildered looks. A tense silence hung in the hall, like the second before a thunderstorm. "Sarah," David opened his mouth. The microphone was on, and his strangled voice echoed across the room. "What are you doing here?" I didn't answer him. I turned to face the hall, facing hundreds of eyes. Distinguished commanders, officers. My voice wasn't loud, but in the absolute silence, every word carried to the back rows. "I am David Walker's wife, Sarah. Sterling." The murmuring in the hall grew louder. "Perhaps it is not my place to speak here, but there are things I have kept to myself for far too long." My voice sounded firm, as if I were telling someone else's story. "You just heard Colonel Walker thank Emily Harper." At the mention of her name, the hum in the room intensified. "Emily Harper is indeed his childhood friend," I continued. "They grew up together on base, and the colonel never hid their close friendship from me." David's face twisted. He took a step forward and hissed, "Sarah, step down. We'll talk at home." I threw him a brief look, and under that glare, he involuntarily took a half step back. But he hid something else from me. I pulled my phone from my purse. For example, how many times he saw her after she returned to the States. Or the fact that after 4 years of marriage, he took out a $2 million life insurance policy, where the beneficiary is not his 4-year-old son, and not his wife, but this very same childhood friend. I held up my phone. The screen displayed the photo of the insurance policy. The hall exploded. What insurance? Beneficiary Harper? No way, that can't be. David's face turned deathly pale. In 2 strides, he was in front of me, reaching for my phone. I took a step back. He missed, stumbling. The tails of his dress coat flared awkwardly in the air. "Sarah!" he yelled. Panic laced his voice. "Not here!" "Not here?" I raised my voice. "David, 2 days ago I came to the gate with our son to bring you lunch. You ordered your aide not to let us in because your childhood friend was inside. In 95-degree heat, your son stood in the main. Son and asked, 'Mommy, does Daddy not love us anymore?' The hall instantly fell silent. It was the dead silence of hundreds of people, holding their breath. David's Adam's apple bobbed. He opened his mouth to say something, but under the crosshairs of hundreds of eyes, his lips seemed glued. Shut. I was raised in the Sterling family. My parents taught me justice. I swept my gaze across the room. I won't list everything the Walker family received to us over the years. 12 construction contracts for $250 million. Bank guarantees for $85 million. 3 years ago, the Walker's company nearly went bankrupt, and it was my older brother who injected $10 million to save them. I paused. $10 million would be enough for an average family for 10 lifetimes. We gave that money without a second thought because David was my husband. But how did they repay us? I pulled up the second document. During the investment, an agreement was signed. Over 3 years, the Walkers' profit didn't even reach half the target. Per the contract, they owe Sterling Enterprises $12 million. Someone in the crowd gasped. "They don't have that kind of money," I enunciated cleanly. But the Sterling family didn't pressure them. We didn't want to put me in the middle. And what? Did David, though? I turned to him. He stood on the stage under the spotlights. Sweat shined on his forehead. His uniform was still perfectly pressed, but he looked as if someone had ripped out his spine. He could barely stand. One of the senior officers on the panel stood up. His face was black with fury. "Walker, is what your wife saying true?" David didn't answer. He looked at me with a gaze that mixed terror, rage, humiliation, and begging. His lips moved, but he couldn't make a sound. I knew what he wanted to say. "Sarah, you can't do this. This is the military. This is my command. You will destroy my career." But he stayed silent because every word I said was true. Chaos erupted in the hall. Subordinates rushed to restore order. Some tried to intervene. Amidst the noise, I turned to the audience and gave a slight nod. The gesture made everyone fall silent for a second. "Ladies and gentlemen," my voice was steady. "I apologize for interrupting your assembly, but I take full responsibility for every word I've said. All evidence has already been forwarded to Public Affairs and Army CID. Let the law and command decide who is right." I straightened up and threw David one last look. "Goodbye, Colonel." I turned and walked toward the exit. The velvet hem swayed to the rhythm of my Ternin. Steps. My heels hammered the floor. Click, clack, click. Every sound was clear, and hard as a final sentence. Behind me lay a buzzing hall, shouting superiors, camera clicks, and the ceaseless whispers of hundreds of people. Someone shouted, "My name," but I didn't look back. Stepping out of the auditorium, the July sun hit my face, so hot it stung my eyes. But I wasn't crying. I walked down the avenue toward the parking lot. Tall, oak trees lined the road, their leaves rustling in the wind. Passing soldiers watched me in astonishment. I reached my car, opened the door, and got in. As soon as the door slammed shut, all the noise of the outside world vanished. I sat behind the wheel, hands resting on the steering column, and stared straight ahead. After a long time, I rested my head on the steering wheel and covered my face with my hands. My phone rang. It was Anna. "Sarah, Nick just got the news." Anna's voice dripped with undisguised triumph. David's commendation was canceled on the spot. CID and Internal Affairs have already pulled him in for preliminary questioning. His command authority is suspended. And that tech project tied to Emily is frozen. Good, I replied. And something else. Anna paused. The IRS and FBI Financial Crimes just raided Emily's company. Nick said the dirty financial trails they found guarantee her a few years in federal prison at the absolute minimum. Understood, I repeated. How are you? I'm fine. I lifted my head and started the engine, going to pick Teddy up from preschool. The engine roared evenly and powerfully. I shifted into drive, hit the gas, and slowly drove out the gates. In the rearview mirror, those gates grew smaller and smaller. This time, no one stopped me. On the way to preschool, Anna called again. Sarah. The IRS got a hit. Her voice trembled with excitement. My sister rarely showed such emotion, meaning it was big. Emily's company had $10 million, sitting in accounts from the government contract, but the money movement is completely illegal. $3 million went to a classified offshore account, and another $500,000 was wired to her personal account. That's enough for prison. Prison? Anna chuckled. That's federal wire fraud on a massive scale. 10 years max security. Not enough, I said. Anna paused for a second. Do you have something else? I do. I gripped the steering wheel tightly, stopping at a red light near the Y. Preschool. Nick mentioned her shady past abroad. I want to know exactly how shady it is. Nick is working on it. He says he'll have results today. Tell him I need it today before the end of business. The light turned green, and I pulled into the preschool lot. Teddy's classroom was on the 3rd floor. I walked up and looked through the door window. He was drawing diligently at a small table, the tip of his tongue sticking out as he gripped a crayon. The teacher approached me and said quietly, Teddy drew a family portrait today. Said he's going to give it to his mommy. A family portrait. I took the piece of paper. On it were 3 crudely drawn stick figures, one large, one smaller, and a tiny one between them. All had smiles like upside-down crescent moons. But there were only 3 figures. Mommy, Teddy, and a dog. Where's Daddy? I asked Teddy. He shook his head and answered in his little voice. Daddy made Mommy cry. I don't want Daddy anymore. I picked him up, burying my face in his little shoulder. He smelled like baby. Soap. And that specific milky scent that stings your nose. Let's go home. Once home, I changed Teddy, sat him down to play with his building blocks in the Black's and Array living room, and went to my office to open the laptop. In my inbox was an email from Nick. Subject: Emily Harper. I opened the attached file, a massive dossier. I scrolled down until I stopped on the 3rd page. It was a scan of a foreign document from 5 years ago. The logo belonged to a European Defense Research Institute. In the list of developers, Emily Harper was listed 4th. The project subject was circled by Nick in red marker. Export of military material technologies. I scrolled further. The 2nd document. Customs records. 3 months before, returning to the U.S., Emily flew 4 times to a country under strict international sanctions regarding military tech. The 3rd document. An email. Sender: Emily. Receiver: anonymous offshore account. The email contained the phrase, samples shipped via third party. I read these documents 3 times. Then I dialed Nick's number. Nick. I looked at everything. My brother's voice was icy, but I could feel the anger boiling beneath it. What? Do you think? She's not running a business. She's running industrial espionage. A pause on the line. When Nick spoke, the words seemed to scrape through clenched teeth. You're right. Her overseas project landed on sanction lists. Before she returned, critical material samples vanished from that lab. Interpol is still investigating, and she brought this into David Walker's base. To be precise, through David's tech contract, she integrated these developments into military logistics. Nick took a breath. Do you understand what this means? Of course. It means David Walker didn't just cheat on his wife. He was used. A woman hiding behind the title of childhood friend used him as a springboard to smuggle things that shouldn't be smuggled into places they shouldn't be. Did David know about this? I asked. Judging by the documents, Likely not, Nick replied. But ignorance doesn't absolve him of responsibility. He's the project commander. All approvals went through him. If he was blinded by his feelings and turned a blind eye to security protocols, he'll have to answer for it. Nick, is this enough for a criminal case? Plenty. But there's a problem. What? Jurisdiction. This involves military installations and national security. Regular cops are powerless here. To take Emily down, the FBI and Army, counterintelligence need to step in. Alex can arrange that. Nick stayed silent, then chuckled. Your middle brother is a 2-star general. Base counterintelligence reports straight up his chain of command. When I called Alex, he was in his office at the Pentagon. Sarah, I received the files. His voice was even deeper than usual. It reminded me of our father right before he flew into a rage. I've already notified the director of the FBI's Counterintelligence Division and Army CID. They're doing a preliminary assessment. How much time will they need? Security says they need to track her company's financial flows. 3 days? Minimum. 3 days is too long, I said. She might try to run. Alex was silent. Worried she'll slip away? Since she spent years abroad, she definitely has escape routes. The IRS is already squeezing her. She's probably panicking. She won't get away. My brother's voice cut like a dull knife. I've already contacted Homeland Security. She's on the no-fly list. She won't even make it. Through the metal detectors at JFK. I felt slightly calmer, but it wasn't enough. Alex, there's someone else. David Walker. My brother said the name for me. Yes. I stood by the office window, watching the sunset. If Emily's case, terrible. David's career is over. But I don't want him to just lose his job. I want him to understand what he did. Alex was silent for a long time. Sarah. His voice took on the tone of an older brother. Are you sure you want to see this through to the end? If the FBI gets involved, David isn't just looking at suspension. It's arrest, isolation, a court-martial. I know. I stared at my reflection in the glass, layered over the lights of evening Manhattan. Alex, when he ordered them not to let me through the gate, was he thinking about the consequences? When he dragged Emily onto the base, was he thinking about the honor of his uniform? When he gave her a $10 million contract, did he remember his duty to his country? My voice was quiet, but hit like a steel hammer. He didn't think about anything. So now he's going to pay for it himself. Alex didn't try to talk me out of it again. The men of the Sterling family never ask you to look back. They only ask, have you decided? And if the answer is, yes, they bulldoze forward. Tomorrow at 9 a.m., he said. CID and the FBI are raiding Emily's office. Are you coming with me? I'm coming. Yes. You're the source of this investigation and the primary witness. And didn't you want David to understand what he's done? Tomorrow, he will. The next morning, at exactly 8:30 a.m., I was outside Regional Command, headquarters. Alex walked out in his Class B uniform. His general's stars gleamed in the sun. Behind him followed a dozen FBI agents in plain clothes and military counterintelligence officers. Let's go. My brother glanced at me and opened the door of a black SUV with government plates. The convoy pulled onto the highway and headed toward the city center to Emily's office. Her firm was on the 16th floor of a high-rise. When we got up, there, IRS and financial crimes agents were already working in the lobby. Boxes of documents were being seized from the accounting department. Alex walked point. His heavy boots echoed loudly on the marble floor. I followed, behind, straight through the open-plan bullpen to the CEO's office. The door was ajar, and I heard Emily's voice. She was speaking on the phone very quietly, but the words were audible. Yes, I understand. The ticket is bought. I'm flying out tonight. Did you move? The assets? David Walker is under fire himself. Relying on him is pointless. Alex threw me a glance and pushed the door open. Emily was sitting behind a massive desk, pressing the phone to her ear. Seeing us, she went white as a sheet. She dropped the phone and jumped up, pushing her chair back so hard it hit the wall. Who are you? By what right are you barging into my office? Alex didn't dignify her with a response. An FBI special agent stepped forward, pulled a document from a folder, and placed it on the desk. Emily Harper. Pursuant to the United States Code, Title 18, regarding espionage, and the illegal trafficking of dual-use technologies, a federal criminal investigation has been opened against you. This is a warrant for your arrest, and an order to search these premises. Emily's lips turned white. You're mistaken. I'm just a project manager. I have an official contract with the base. Then explain this. The agent opened an iPad. On the screen was a wire transfer, record for $3 million. Recipient. A shadow account in the Cayman Islands, controlled by a syndicate involved in smuggling military tech. Emily swayed. The agent swiped to the next file. The foreign document. This is your project from 5 years ago involving military-grade materials. By law, individuals involved in such projects must declare it upon re-entry to the Clarence Blank, U.S. and undergo vetting. You failed to do so. Emily started shaking. And finally, a screenshot of the email. You sent this before returning to the States. Samples shipped via third party. What samples were those? Emily didn't answer. She backed away, tripped on her high heels against the edge of the rug, and nearly fell. Gripping the edge of the desk so hard her nails scraped the wood, she stammered, I don't know what you're talking about. I demand my lawyer. Please. You will have one, Alex cut in. His voice was cold as well water. But you will not leave this office, and your communication devices are seized. A female agent took Emily's phone from the desk. Emily watched as the phone disappeared into an evidence bag, and a true animalistic terror appeared in her eyes. The fear of a person who thought they controlled everything and suddenly realized all escape routes were cut off. You can't do this to me, she suddenly shrieked, her voice breaking into a hysterical pitch. Do you even know who I am? I grew up with David Walker. He's the base commander. If you do anything to me, he will crush you. David Walker. Alex repeated the name without a trace of emotion. Are you unaware of where David Walker currently is? Emily froze. Alex took out his phone, dialed a number, and put it on speaker. Major Smith, this is General Sterling. Where is Colonel Walker right now? Smith's voice from Public Affairs sounded exhausted. General, Walker was relieved of command yesterday after the assembly. At 0800 hours this morning, he was officially taken into custody and placed in the brig. CID and military prosecutors are currently interrogating him. The primary charge is gross negligence regarding his signing of the contract with Miss Harper's company. The speakerphone broadcast Smith's words across the office. Emily's face went from white to gray, as if a bucket of ice water had been dumped over her head. No, that can't be. He promised to protect me. He promised, she muttered, quieter and quieter until she collapsed into her chair. Her expensive makeup was smeared with cold sweat. Her mascara ran. Looking at her, I felt no gloating, only cold clarity. Emily, I said. She lifted a scattered gaze to me. You asked David if you would be in my place had you not left. It doesn't matter what he thought. What matters is that your own actions just secured you a ticket to federal prison for the next few decades. Her eyes widened. I stepped closer and looked down at her. Did you get close to him because of your feelings? Or because he conveniently happened to be the commander responsible for a tech project? Her lips trembled, but she stayed silent. However, her face spoke for itself. Alex waved a hand. 2 agents stood on either side of Emily. Miss Harper, come with us. As they let her out, the whole office watched. She walked between 2 agents in windbreakers, her face gray, hair disheveled. She lost one shoe and limped barefoot on one side. The employees who had fawned over her yesterday now hid behind their monitors, afraid to breathe too loudly. I stood by the office door watching her go. Nick called. Sarah, excellent news. His voice was full of triumph. The FBI took total jurisdiction of Harper's case. Financial fraud has been upgraded to treason and espionage. Her hidden accounts, connections, everything is under the microscope. Interpol is already dismantling the syndicate. As for David, he's going to sit in lockup pending investigation for at least a month. If he's lucky, stripped of rank and dishonorably discharged. If he's unlucky, you know the rest. I walked to the window on the 16th floor. Manhattan lay before me. Somewhere far in the distance, you could probably see the outline of that military base. Those gates I had walked through for 4 years now seemed like a tiny gray speck. "Are you ever going back there?" Alex asked, walking up beside me. I shook my head. "No. And your things? I don't need anything. Except Teddy's stuff, nothing." Alex fell silent, then stroked my hair. He hadn't done that in years. "Not since. I got my first A in middle school. Let's go home." We stepped out of the skyscraper into bright sunlight. Before getting into the press of car, I looked back up at the high-rise. The lights were on in Emily's 16th floor office. She would never return there. As for David, right now he was probably sitting in a windowless interrogation room, replaying his decisions over the last 3 months, minute by minute, remembering how he let his friend onto the base, how he melted at her sweet talk, how he signed documents blindly. He would understand everything. He would understand that it wasn't my phone call to my brother that destroyed him, nor the Sterling's vindictiveness, nor even Emily's espionage. He destroyed himself. As we drove through the city, Alex suddenly said, "Sarah, do you remember what Dad wrote in his will for you?" I froze. I was 12 when Dad died. His will was addressed to Nick, but Nick later told me that at the very end, Dad left a line specifically for me. "If Sarah is ever wronged, the doors of the Sterling home are always open to her." I thought it was just comfort. "Dad didn't just leave you those words," Alex said. "He left you 15% of the corporation's shares. Nick managed them for you, but now it's time to take them fully into your own hands. And another thing." Alex's gaze deepened. "Dad left us connections, authority, power. That was left to the entire Sterling family. So Emily Harper's case isn't just your personal problem." His voice grew hard, just like our father's. "If someone touches the Sterlings, they have to pay. David Walker is just the beginning. Emily is just the beginning. All their accomplices, everyone who turned a blind eye, everyone who took a bribe, no one will escape accountability. The Sterlings are cleaning house, no mercy." I leaned back in the seat. The ice inside me finally melted. My phone beeped. A photo from the preschool teacher. Teddy was doing morning exercises, standing at the front of the line, seriously stretching his chubby little arms. The caption read, "Teddy became the line leader today. He said he's going to protect all the kids." Protect all the kids. I zoomed in on the photo, looked at his chubby cheeks, and smiled. On the 3rd day after Emily's arrest, the news swept through the entire base. Word was she was taken by the FBI in handcuffs right out of her office, that she was part of a massive spy ring. I didn't listen to the gossip. I spent my time with Teddy and prepared the divorce papers. Anna hired a lawyer for me, Jessica Roberts, a woman in her 40s, a litigation specialist who had never lost a case. Reviewing my files, she took off her glasses and said, "Miss Sterling, in 15 years of practice, I have never seen a case that wins itself so easily. David Walker committed adultery, attempted to divert marital funds via a life insurance policy, and is currently under federal and military investigation." Roberts steepled her fingers. "That policy with the mistress alone is enough for a judge to grant you full custody unconditionally. And considering the financial fraud with the Walkers' corporate debts, they have absolutely zero leverage." "I don't just want custody," I said. "I'm taking everything. The property, the accounts, the cars. What's mine stays mine. What's his? I couldn't care less. About, and I want to change Teddy's last name." The lawyer nodded. "Consider it done." Updates from Alex kept rolling in. David's interrogations were non-stop. Counterintelligence discovered that 3 security reports in Emily's project were crudely forged. Any rookie auditor would have noticed it, but David had signed off. He was the primary authority and put his signature on the line. He's not blind, Alex told me over the phone. He just didn't read them at all. Told investigators he trusted Emily. Trusted. The word sounded like a cruel joke coming from Alex. He trusted her, so he brought her onto the base. Trusted her, so he gave her a $10 million contract. Trusted her, so he signed blindly. Now, that trust was going to cost him his rank and his freedom. Emily's case moved fast, classified as high priority. She was facing 15 to 18 years for treason and espionage. She turned out to be a cog in an Esoplos Kepler 7 international smuggling machine. She specifically targeted Walker as a convenient mark. She knew he still harbored feelings for her. From start to finish, David was just a key used to unlock a door, then thrown away. A week later, Roberts served David the divorce papers. He was sitting in the Fangs brig. No visitors, no calls, but legal documents were permitted. That day, Major Smith called me, Mrs. Walker, Sarah. Walker received the papers. His voice was tense. He reacted very emotionally. He said he won't sign anything and demands to see you. We have nothing to talk about. Tell him all conditions are strictly by the seas. Book. If he doesn't sign voluntarily, I'll take it to a judge. And he has enough problems with his court-martial. Tell him to use his head. Smith sighed. I'll pass it on. I stood on the balcony looking at the tall elm trees in the yard. The wind rustled the green leaves. Footsteps sounded behind me. Mommy! Teddy hugged my leg. When are we going to Grandma's estate upstate? I knelt down and picked him up. We'll go this weekend. Grandma misses you. Mommy, are we never going back to Daddy? Never. I pulled him close. From now on, we're going to live near Grandma and your uncles. Mommy will never let anyone turn you away from home again. Teddy nodded seriously and whispered into my shoulder, Mommy, don't cry. But I wasn't crying. Since that day, there had been no more tears. Another week passed, and David signed the divorce papers. Attorney Roberts brought me the agreement, where David's crooked, heavily pressed signature sat on every page. He asked to see his son, Roberts said. I replied that you have sole custody, and visitation schedules will be determined later. Furthermore, being in federal lockup, he objectively cannot see him. The name change for Teddy is finalized too. Your brother's legal team expedited it. In a month, he will officially be Theodore Sterling. Perfect. When Emily's case went to trial, David's mother called me. Her voice was raspy, like sandpaper. She begged me to spare David for the sake of his son. Eleanor, I replied, I didn't arrest him, and I didn't open the case against him. The federal government is doing that. The woman he let into a classified, prossified age facility turned out to be a spy. I didn't force him to forge security documents. Silence hung on the line. And as for your company's debts to Sterling Enterprises, that's business. Even without this situation, we would have held you accountable for failing the contract. You're heartless, she screamed. We were blind when we let you into our family. Eleanor, your son truly was blind. Only he wasn't blind toward me. He couldn't distinguish those who genuinely loved him from those who just used him. He was blind these entire 4 years. I hung up and added her number to my blocked list. 3 months later, the autumn wind brought the smell of fallen leaves. I was driving toward the old family estate in upstate New York. Anna sat beside me. In the back, in his car seat, Teddy was playing with a toy dinosaur. Sarah, did you hear the news? Anna asked. They sentenced Harper. 18 years in maximum security federal prison. Assets seized. Her lawyers will appeal, but they have zero chance. The FBI built an airtight case. 18 years. I mentally repeated the number and asked, and David? Military tribunal reached a verdict. Stripped of rank, dishonorably discharged. From the armed forces, loss of all benefits and pension. He gave the Army 16 years, and he left in disgrace. No one even showed up to say goodbye. We pulled into the driveway of the old estate. I killed the engine but didn't get out right away. Sarah, Anna began. I'm not sad, Anna. My sister covered my hand with hers. I know. Mom was waiting for us on the porch in a cozy wool sweater. Seeing the car, she broke into a wide smile. Teddy jumped out and ran to her. Grandma! Grandma! The house smelled of roasted turkey, cranberry sauce, and fresh pie. While Teddy played with a new Lego set, I walked out to the backyard. The old oak tree I used to climb as a kid stood there. Beneath it was my father's wicker chair. I sat in it, tilting my face to the autumn sun. My phone vibrated. A text from Nick. Sterling Enterprises Board of Directors. Approved the restructuring. Your 15% share is now officially under your active.eu. Management. Documents in your email. Welcome home, Sarah. Next came a text from Alex. The order regarding David Walker has been distributed across the command. The Harper espionage ring case is successfully closed. FBI extended official gratitude to the Sterling family for cooperation. If Dad were alive, he'd be proud. I read the messages a few times. Then I found William Walker, David's father, in my contacts and sent a short text. William, pursuant to the 3-year agreement, Sterling Enterprises is initiating asset seizure of your company. Please hand over all operations within 30 days. Otherwise, we will file for forced collections. Send. I leaned back in the chair and closed my eyes. The autumn wind rustled the crown of the old oak. Footsteps approached. Mommy. Teddy rested his head on my knees. Grandma says it's time to eat. I picked him up. Teddy, starting today, your last name is Sterling. Teddy tilted his head, thought about it, and asked, So Mommy is a Sterling, and Grandma is a Sterling, and Uncle Alex is a Sterling. We're all Sterlings? Yes. I kissed his forehead. We are all the Sterling family. Teddy laughed happily, showing off 2 new teeth, jumped down, and ran into the house. Grandma, I'm a Sterling now. My phone vibrated again. A text from an unknown number. Sarah, it's Emily. Harper. Writing to you from lockup. I know you won't forgive me. But I want to. Say one thing. David knew nothing about the tech smuggling. He just trusted me. Too much. He was a blind idiot, and the blame is all mine. His only mistake was meeting me. I read the message and deleted. David Walker's only mistake wasn't meeting Emily. His mistake was that, while married to me, he kept another woman in his heart. His mistake was staying silent when his family needed protection. His mistake was throwing his wife and son out the gate for his friend. Emily would never understand that. Perhaps David himself wouldn't either. But I no longer needed their understanding. When I walked into the dining room, a steaming prime rib roast sat on the table, alongside mashed potatoes, gravy, and roasted vegetables. Sister Anna was pouring red wine. Nick and Alex were arguing about something by the window, but, seeing me, they raised their glasses. Welcome back, Sarah Sterling, Nick said. Alex chuckled and patted the chair next to him. Sit here. Teddy was already stuffing his face with meat, his nose smeared with gravy. This was my family. We were the Sterlings. Eat before it gets cold, Mom said, picking up a spoon. Anna suddenly put down her fork. By the way, Sarah, David's mother tried to contact me today. Wanted to see Teddy. I told her Teddy is a Sterling now and has nothing to do with the Walkers. Let her take it to family court for a visitation schedule, if she dares. You did the right thing, Nick noted casually. Alex stayed quiet but looked at me questioningly. Do we need to keep hitting them? I shook my head. Enough. David had lost his rank, his career, his family, and his son. From a rising star, commander. He had turned into an exiled, disgraced failure. That would be enough. For him for the rest of his life. Dinner finished by 3 in the afternoon. The brothers left first. By the prosely Anna Maitaman by Gates. Alex turned to me. Sarah, before Dad died, he told me one thing. Out of all the kids, he worried. About you the most. You were the youngest. He was terrified someone would mistreat you. He looked at me with a smile. I think Dad can sleep peacefully. Now, he got into his dark green SUV. The engine purred, and the car disappeared, around the bend. Sister Anna stepped out onto the porch. Let's go inside, It's getting chilly. Thank you, Anna. She ruffled my hair. Don't mention it. Go on. I looked up. The autumn sky was high and blue. In my coat pocket, my phone chimed. A notification from the bank. The deposit of corporate dividends from my Sterling Enterprises shares. The sum was $3 million. I slipped the phone back into my pocket and went inside. The living room was warm, bathed in yellow light. Teddy was playing with his new dinosaur and ran to me with a laugh. Anna sat on the sofa with a glass of wine, laughing at something on the TV. Mom was bustling in the kitchen. And outside the window, in the autumn dusk, the old oak stood strong and secure, its roots driven deep into the earth just like the Sterling family.